Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to the US once again and we're going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So these guys are another relatively new addition to their local beer scene from what I understand, but in the few years they've been around, they have been very prolific. They've done a lot of different beer styles and it seems that their beers have had very, very good write-ups actually. But the beer we're having a look at today is a style that I very much enjoy. It's one that you don't come across all that often, and the area that this beer is from is, of course, very well known for this style. So, needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. I always enjoy introducing new American breweries to you here on the channel as well. So, hopefully, this is another good beer. Hopefully, it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to San Diego in the southern part of California over on the American West Coast. And we're going to have a look at my first beer from Pure Project Brewing. So this particular beer is simply called Pure West. It comes in at 6.3% ABV and this one is a West Coast IPA. So this beer is another one of the random American finds I made in Kiosk over in Copenhagen. They've always got a great selection of American stuff from different states, and as I've mentioned to you before, we've been getting more and more things from different states in the US recently, which is always welcome. But yeah, whenever I see a good West Coast IPA, I'm always very curious about this because I do miss this particular style, to be honest with you. So yeah, where better to go than California for one of these? But let's crack on and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. This one is supposed to be pretty damn nice. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done, or I will do, I should say, from Pure Project Brewing. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is that takes your fancy. Just go into the search bar, put that in, and then if I've reviewed beers from the area you search for, they should pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries and you'll find this one in the American playlist along with many other things, and there aren't many playlists there from different countries that you can have a look at as well. But yeah, let's go on and have a little look at my brewery notes then and tell you a wee bit about Pure Project Brewing for the first time. So, Pure Project, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in San Diego in California, and the company was founded by Jesse Pine and Matt Robar. So Matt came from a background in sort of management and digital strategy, whereas Jesse came from more of a finance background, but two businessmen basically. But the story of the brewery goes back to 2013 when the two friends were on a backpacking trip through the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, which as we know is also a very good beer state. But at this point, Jesse had just moved to Costa Rica and was becoming acquainted with the country, and his friends were just really curious about this and asked him a lot about the country. And over those few days, the subject of beer came up. But this stuck with Jesse, and over the few days remaining on the trip, he ended up with the idea of opening up his own brewery in Manuel Antonio down in Costa Rica. And it was this that became the Manuel Antonio Brewing Company. But over the following 2 years, they raised funds, they did a little bit of brewing, but they found that it was really difficult because of things like the lack of water treatment and infrastructure in the city, so they made the decision to move the business to the US. So despite the move to the US, they wanted to keep the kind of pura vida, pure life spirit that they picked up down in Costa Rica and focus on local ingredients and being environmentally friendly. And it was this that made them go for the name Pure Project. But they settled on a Miramar in San Diego for the brewery location, and at this point in 2015 they were joined by Winslow Sawyer, who was a very highly respected brewer from the Santa Cruz Mountains. But he started to develop the first beers, and then the design team got together to work on the brewery building, and they eventually opened their doors to the public in January of 2016. But apparently it took them 6 months to get the brewery up and running, and they started off with a 7-barrel, which I believe is 1,100 litre brewing system, and the brewery is located in the HG Fenton campus, and it had there's a good few breweries around it from what I saw when I had a little look at the map. But over the years, they've opened up a few new locations, including tasting rooms in Bankers Hill, known as Balboa Park, and also in Carlsbad. And then in 2021, they took over the former Iron Fist brewing location in Vista, and this has since become the home of their main brewing operations. But the new location is in the newest location, I should say, is in North Park, and this opened in March of 2022. And when you look at pictures of this, I have to say it does look pretty swanky, to be honest with you. But yeah, the original brewery is still in operation, and they have got little brew kits, I believe, at some of the other locations as well. But mainly they're brewing their beers at the location in Vista, and some at the original location in Miramar as well. But as of March 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 525 different kinds of beer approximately, and that has seen them do a range of different styles, you know, big imperial stouts and things like this, lots of different kinds of IPAs, lagers, and also some sour beers as well. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Pure Project Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Untappd page to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have produced. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a look at this beer and see what it's all about. So I'll let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. You can see it is pretty straightforward, this one. There you can see one of the Pure Project Brewing symbols there. You can see on the back there is the main brewery symbol, of course, and the original brewery, the what was it called? The San Miguel. No, it wasn't San Miguel. Was it San? No, it was Manuel Antonio. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, Manuel Antonio. The Manuel Antonio Brewing Company symbol was quite similar to this as well, which you can still find on Untappd and in a few other places. But like I said to you, this one is a 6.3% West Coast IPA. This one is hopped with Nelson Sauvin from New Zealand, and then Citra, Strata and Simcoe, all of which come from the US. We know these hops fairly well. Nelson Sauvin is about 16% alpha acid, and it will give you this lovely kind of white, green, grapey, almost gooseberry type flavour. Citra, about 14% alpha acid, big kind of oily mango notes in a West Coast IPA. It's also going to give you quite a bit of lemon limey character and potentially a wee bit of lychee. Strata is an interesting one. That's about 14% alpha acid as well, and it can give you this really kind of like melony kind of strawberry type thing actually. Simcoe is another old school one, and these West Coast IPAs, it's going to give you quite an oily passion fruit actually, so about 12% alpha acid in there. So a very interesting mix of kind of old school and more modern hops in this beer, I have to say. But yeah, this is a 473 milliliter can, 1 American pint, and I believe this cost me about 60, maybe 65 Danish kroner when I bought it. So that is that's going to be about 100 Swedish kroner, about 10 euros, somewhere in the region of £9 sterling, and about $11 American, something like that. But yeah, the Danish kroner is very strong just now, so that's one of the reasons why the price is a little bit more. But yeah, American import as well, all the import taxes and that jazz, that's it too. But plain silver top on the can there. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. The Pure West Unfiltered West Coast IPA at 6.3% ABV. Let's do this. So, yeah, let's have a wee look at this and see what it's all about. So as I've said to you before, I love a good West Coast IPA, and for me there are two directions this style can take. It can either be a little bit more kind of biscuity, biscuity and kind of bready, such as the Russian River, Pliny the Elder, or it can be a little bit more oily and caramelly, such as the Sierra Nevada Torpedo. This one, just judging by the colour of it, I'm thinking this is going to be more along the lines of the Pliny the Elder end of the spectrum, end of the flavour spectrum, I guess we should say. But yeah, you can see this beer has poured very, very nicely. So before the head disappears, we can say that this beer's poured with somewhere in the region of like a 2/3, 3/4 finger of a frothy, kind of bumpy white head actually. There's a mix of bigger bubbles at the top there and smaller ones down toward the bottom. That does go really nicely. So yeah, bigger bubbles in there, smaller bubbles too. Pardon me. And yeah, the colour of this one is absolutely lovely, I have to say. So for me, this is a very kind of bright, hazy golden colour, almost the same colour as like a German Helles or something like that. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or adjuncts that you put into the beer can affect its colour as well. But when it comes to West Coast IPAs, or any IPA generally speaking, I don't think you really have to care about those 2 variables. It's not often that you'll barrel age an IPA. These beers are intended to be drunk fresh. But yeah, with this one you can see there are little bits of particle floating around this one. You can see that's got a little touch of the kind of natural particle in there. But overall it does look really nice. Not much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. 1 or 2 big bubbles toward the bottom of the glass, and a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall it does look pretty nice, I have to say. And yeah, definitely not out with the realms of possibility for a West Coast IPA. These beers can be very kind of deep in amber, or they can be quite bright in yellow like this one. It just really depends on the type of malts. So yeah, nothing else really to say about the appearance. The head has faded away to be a thinner foamy layer, and you've got that thicker ring around the edge of the glass there too. But let's take a wee look at the aroma then, and just see what this beer is all about. Oh yeah. I'm going to say straight away, this beer is pretty nice. It has that kind of more, kind of bready and kind of bright grassy type note to it as well. But yeah, this is definitely going to be more along the lines of a kind of Pliny the Elder type West Coast IPA, rather than a more oily Sierra Nevada Torpedo type thing. But yeah, always nice to try different things, especially when they're from the area where this beer style made its name. But yeah, this is lovely, this one. It's got, the first impression of this beer, it's got a lovely little bit of sweetness to it. It's got some nice kind of floral aromaticity and grassy character, and you've also got the big oily fruity notes out of this one, getting a lot of Nelson Sauvin, I have to say. But yeah, let's break this aroma down for you and just describe it that wee bit more in depth before we taste the beer. So for me, aroma wise, this beer is quite aroma wise, this beer for me, the backbone of it, on the malty side of things, you're getting a good little bit of fresh white bread crust coming out of this one. So yeah, good little bit of that fresh white bready bread crust in there. That forms the backbone of the beer. There's a little touch of woodiness to this one. I am also getting a wee bit of a more kind of crackery note out of this beer too. So yeah, fresh white bread, like hedgehog roll bread crust in there, little touch of woodiness, some Jacob's cream cracker, and then on top of that, there's definitely a little bit of a kind of fluffy white bready character coming out of this one. It's a very light kind of airy bread. As I've said in a couple of American reviews, it's always interesting for me looking at the malt bases in these American beers. I'm fairly familiar with the malts, you know, the kind of two rows and crystals and stuff like that have been quite commonly used in American brewing over the years. But there are, when you go to and try beers from different states, the malt bases of course feel different, because you've got lots of local malteries over there. Most of the beer that's brewed in Europe tends to use German malt, or yeah, there are a few other countries that produce it, but yeah, it's mainly German malt that you'll find used by European craft breweries. So yeah, the breadiness, the white bready character in this beer for me is really light and really airy and quite different to what I'm used to. So that's interesting as well. Yeah, the one thing I'm wondering about this beer, whether there's maybe a little touch of wheat in it. I don't know if you have to write that on the American beers, because you do in Europe usually. But the main difference, of course, one of the main differences between a West Coast IPA and a New England hazy is that West Coast tend to use barley malt for the most part. I've seen 1 or 2 that had a little bit of oat in them or a little bit of wheat, but mainly these are barley malt beers. So yeah, I do get a little touch of an almost like wheaty density out of this one, a wee touch of bitiness in the back of the nose. But yeah, this is a really bready leaning West Coast IPA for me. On top of the breadiness though, you do start to get some of the little bits of sweetness. I don't know if I would go as far as saying it's kind of caramelly, but there is a little touch of a more intense kind of sweet, like sort of sugary sweetness there. in the middle of the nose, but you've also got some nice kind of biscuity characteristics as well, like McVitie's digestive biscuits, or cookies, I guess the Americans would call them. It's one of the things, my English is all over the place these days, because a lot of my Swedish friends, when they speak English, they use the American English rather than the European English. So yeah, this beer does have a little bit of that more kind of biscuity McVitie's digestive note for me. So yeah, I do like that about it. But yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about the malty side of the beer. On the hoppy side of things then, first off with the green component. Now this beer does have a good little bit of dankness to it. Another one of the main differences between the West Coast IPA and the New England is the way that you hop these beers. So remember, there are 3 different kinds of hopping you can use. Early addition hopping within the first hour of the wort boil, that gives you mainly bitterness. Late addition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil, that gives you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly a bit of flavour and aroma. And then dry hopping, which comes after the wort boil is complete, that is all about the flavour and aroma. West Coast IPAs tend to use all 3, whereas New England IPAs tend to rely on the latter 2. But over time, I have noticed that more modern West Coast IPAs, the bitterness of these beers has dropped quite a wee bit, because a lot of people come into beer now drinking the New England hazies. So yeah, we'll need to see as well whether this is more of a modern take on the West Coast IPA or whether it's a bit more old school, so we can comment on that when we taste it. But certainly from the aroma in this beer, it does have a little bit more depth to it and a wee bit of the dankness. There's a little touch of earthiness in there. You've got that nice kind of, you've got a nice little bit of a danker kind of pine resin in there, but not too much, I would say that. And you've also got the kind of nice brighter floral aromaticity and a bit of wet, zesty kind of grassy character too. So yeah, definitely worth bearing that in mind with this beer. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, it is kind of what you would expect. It's got a wee bit of old school character to it, but the strata gives it that wee bit of kind of modernity. So yeah, for me, I get a lot. The Nelson Sauvin really stands out in this one for me, so I'm getting a lot of that kind of white, green, grapey character. Good little bit of gooseberry, also some lychee, which will come from the citra in this one. But yeah, there's a good bit of oily mango in there. There's a little bit of a kind of juicier passion fruit as well. The mango will be the citra, the passion fruit will be coming from the Simcoe. And there is just that little touch of, I'm wondering if that lychee note has a wee bit more strawberry to it, and that'll be the strata. Strata for me has always been quite a melony or kind of strawberry type hop in this one. So there is a wee bit of the melon coming out of this too. So quite oily in its fruity character, I have to say. But you know, I think the Nelson Sauvin and the strata are going to combine quite well together. And Citra and Simcoe is a tried and tested combination, of course, too. So yeah, quite a nice oily fruity character to this beer for me. So yeah, as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, but I think it is time for us to try this one now. So this is the Pure West, a West Coast IPA at 6.3% ABV from Pure Project in San Diego in the southern part of California in the US. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Oh yeah. I have to say, that's pretty nice. It is. Yeah, it's definitely one of these more kind of biscuity and slightly more bready leaning West Coast IPAs, but this is a good beer. Absolutely. My first encounter with this brewery certainly hasn't disappointed. But yeah, this is lovely, I have to say. I do enjoy beers like this one. We'll just get the rest of it out and into the glass there. But yeah, this is a good West Coast IPA. This one, I'd be very curious to see what one of their double IPAs was like. So we'll need to see what we can do about that in the future. But as I say, Shiosk are always rotating their American assortment. So yeah, we'll need to see when and if we can make that happen. But yeah, this beer gets a thumbs up from me. Love a good West Coast IPA. This one certainly hasn't disappointed. I miss that kind of big bitterness that you always got from this style. So let's break this beer down then and describe the flavour for you a wee bit more in depth. And the one thing I would say about this beer is that it doesn't really do anything surprising in terms of the style. It's just very, very well done, and you can't ask for much more than that these days because of how many, there are so many beers and breweries out there on the market. So yeah, the way that this goes together is very, very nice. Middle third of your palate then with this beer. Backbone is absolutely a little bit of a kind of fresh white bready bread crust, and I really like how that goes together. So yeah, fresh white bready bread crust in there, little touch of woodiness toward the front of that middle third of your palate, and that goes together really well. Above the white bread crust, there's a teeny little bit of a kind of Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing to this one, but not too much. Then you get a little layer of a kind of more, it's quite airy, but at the same time quite crispy, wholemeal brown bread, and then you've got the white bread just sitting above that layer on this one. So that's quite interesting too. So yeah, the way this beer goes together in that sense as well is also very, very nice. So for me, the for me as well, I would say the above the white bread, that does almost feel that there's I do wonder if there's a wee touch of wheat in this one, because you can just feel a little bit of that more dense white bready character in there on top of that. So yeah, like I say, you've got bread crust, you've got a little bit of wood, a bit of cracker, a little tiny touch of wholemeal brown bread, fluffier white bread in there. It's quite a nice airy fluffy white bread, as I've said, then a slightly denser, almost like wheaty type layer, and then above the wheaty layer you've got some nice kind of biscuity notes coming out of the beer. So this is where you get the sweeter side of things. In the dead centre of your palate, there's like a little circle where you've got a more you do get a little bit more of a kind of dense, like oily, biscuity character there, and that of course is the alcohol coming out of the beer. So yeah, you've got that more kind of dense alcohol side in the beer there. You've got a little bit of McVitie's, and you feel from that little circle in the middle of your palate, as you move out toward the edges of that middle third of your tongue, you start to get the more McVitie's digestive biscuity type sweetness out of this beer too, which I think is very, very nice. Yeah, interesting stuff from that perspective, I have to say. But on the, I think that covers everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate then. So we'll go to the back third of the palate. The border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a kind of white bready build up in there. You get a little bit of a kind of white bready build up. Then the back third of your palate, the flavour profile of that is quite similar to what's going on in the middle third of your palate, but obviously the layers are just different thicknesses and things. So the backbone, the base layer, sorry, of that back third of your palate, you get a nice wee bit of a kind of more dry bread crusty character out of it. Above that, there's a wee bit of Jacob's cream cracker, and once again, that's a wee bit more dry. As I've always said, more dry and bitter flavours come out on the back third of the palate, where or come out further back on the palate, whereas sweeter flavours come out a wee bit further forward. Then above that, you get a little bit more of a above that you're getting the kind of the brown bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy, then the fluffy white bready layer, which feels really light and airy and almost slightly crisp on the back third of the palate, and then just above all of that I'm getting what I suspect is a little bit of a kind of wheaty bitiness coming out of the beer, and then above all of that you're getting some of the kind of yeasty notes out of the beer, which are very nice. So yeah, the kind of more yeasty notes on the back third of the palate is a very light, airy white bread, as I said. It's a very light, airy, kind of almost farmhousey white bread. There's a little bit of woodiness in there. There's a little bit of cracker and just a little bit of an almost kind of slight spice to it as well. But definitely on the back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour of the beer is taller. Then as you move forward into that middle third of your palate, it condenses down and squashes together that wee bit more. So yeah, it's good stuff. So yeah, as I say, I do like how this pieces together. On the hot, I think that covers the malty and yeasty side of the beer. So we should move on to the hoppy side of things now. So the green component first. In the back corners of the palate, I absolutely get a little bit of earthiness, and that builds a good bridge actually with some of the kind of more bread crusty flavours in the beer. But as you move further forward along the sides of your palate, you've got a little bit of a herbal character there, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of your tongue, there's more of a kind of floral, aromatic type quality. This one, you do get a little bit of that kind of more dank, kind of piney resin quality out of this beer, and I have to say, I do wonder how much of this, how much early edition hopping has been done with this beer, because as I say, you do get a little bit of that piney dankness, and all of the hops used in this one are capable of giving you that, if you add them at the right point in the during the wort boil, because it's basic chemistry. The longer these things are in the actual whirlpool, the more of the more kind of chemicals you're going to extract from them. That's it, basically. It is chemistry. But yeah, you do get that nice kind of deeper dankness out of the beer, and then later on, further forward, you start to get a more kind of floral aromatic note out of this one. It's got a little bit of spice to it as well. Round the front curve of the palate, you've got a little bit of a lighter, just kind of grassiness in there. It's quite a wet grassiness, but at the same time, you've got a little bit of zesty character to it as well. So yeah, that's worth bearing in mind. Yeah. So yeah, the nice kind of more wet, grassy character that comes out of this beer is really quite nice. Yeah, green component for me is really good. Proper. It does have a good little bit of bitterness to this one. Good little bit of floral depth. So yeah, it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, on the front third of the palate, then the fruity side of the beer, so the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a bready build up, and there's quite a white bready character. The base of that, you've got a wee touch of a more kind of bread crusty note, little touch of brown bread, then the smooth white bread on top of that. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's look at that fruity side of the beer then. So on the fruity side of things, at the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a little bit of a more kind of slightly stronger passion fruit, and maybe a wee tiny hint of grapefruit. The grapefruit's going to come from the Citra, and the more kind of passion fruity the softer passion fruity side of things is going to come from the Simcoe. There's a good little bit of juicy mango in there as well, and then yeah, further forward on the palate, like when you move to the very middle of it, you can feel there's a definite change. Like as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, you've got that lovely oily white green grapey sort of note out of it too, which I think is really nice. So you get that soft Nelson Sauvin kind of character out of this one, which I really enjoy. So yeah, lovely kind of soft Nelson Sauvin character in there. And then yeah, white green grapey notes, more kind of gooseberry, a bit more of an oily gooseberry the further forward on the palate you go. But then above that, you do get this little bit of an almost oily melon, and then a little touch of strawberry. That's the strata. The kind of melony strawberry notes in this beer are kind of strata-like, and I think you get a wee bit more melon out of this beer, along with the kind of gooseberry white green grape, the further into the aftertaste that you go. So that's worth bearing in mind. So yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is It's really nice in that sense. But the further into the aftertaste you go, it is more and more about the white green grapey character of the Nelson Sauvy. But yeah, a little bit of strawberry and a little bit of melon from the Strata as well, and then some of the kind of more tropical side of things from the Citra and the Simcoe too. But very nice from that perspective, I have to say. Very drinkable West Coast IPA actually. But I think that's everything we really need to say about the flavour profile of this beer, so we can round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer is pretty much right in the middle of the spectrum, mid-bodied. Carbonation is very smooth. This beer overall does have a wee bit of smoothness to it, potentially due to the fact that it's unfiltered. And that could also explain some of the kind of smoother, bready characters that we've been having out of this one as well. It's kind of up to you whether you filter or unfilter, or, you filter or leave the beer unfiltered with the West Coast IPA. It's good either way in my experience. But yeah, with this one, I'd say mid-bodied, smooth carbonation, generally has quite a smooth mouthfeel to it. In terms of IBUs, what could we say about this one? I think it's got at least 60 IBUs, 50 or 60. I don't think it's quite, the kind of big 80 that we used to get minimum from this style back in the day. So yeah, there's a good little bit of IBU to this beer. Lovely kind of smooth. There is a lovely sort of, in the malt base, you've got a bit of smoothness in there, a little bit of dryness and a wee touch of sweetness, which you always want. Lovely oily fruity characters as well. But the way everything goes together in this beer, I think is very, very nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me, I have to say. But other than that, I think we have said everything we really need to about this beer. It's a really nice West Coast IPA. I'd be very curious to see what some of the other beer styles are like at this brewery as well. But yeah, that one was the Pure West 6.3% West Coast IPA from Pure Project in San Diego in California. I think this one has been it's been really nice to try. Always cool to introduce new American breweries to you here on the channel, so hopefully we can do even more over the next little while. But until the next time, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Pure Project as well, and we will see about returning to these guys at some point very, very soon. But until then, slange it, skull, cheers, check out my social media, check out Pure Project social media, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Slange it, skull, cheers, thank you for watching.